ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। Om, that is infinite, namely reality. This is infinite, namely this universe. The infinite proceeds from the infinite. Taking the infinitude of the infinite, it remains as infinite. Om, peace, peace, peace. May Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna bless whatever happens in this lecture. This is a series of talks on Brihadaranyaka Upanishad as it would appeal to a practitioner, a common practitioner. Till now, in this study of Upanishad, we have covered 2 chapters. However, we need to redress an important mantra which we skipped during the last class. This mantra occurs in the 2nd chapter, 5th Brahmana, the last 2 mantras. Mostly it is 18 and 19. Before we resume with that, let us see why is it that we need to study Upanishads. Swami Vivekananda says that the study of the Vedas, actually, by study of Vedas, he meant study of the Upanishads. He said that the study of the Vedas removes the superstitions. If we study Hinduism as it is practiced now, we can note that the highest spiritual truths are packaged in the format of this religion for point number 1, easy understanding. And point number 2 is to promote the practice that leads to realization. That is the main important thing. Religion should lead to realization. But over a period of time, the humanity gradually begins to settle with just the packaged format, forgetting that the ideals that the religion actually denotes and the purpose for which the religion is propounded. Forgetting these 2, he settles only for the packaged format. It is then that the man begins to propagate superstitions. This is the genesis of superstitions. For instance, to give an instance of what a superstition is, though people may not accept it, but this appeals to me as an instance, as a symbolic instance. Now he begins to believe, this practitioner begins to believe, say for instance, that waving the fire in front of the Lord, the lamp fire, when he waves in front of the Lord, he may have various ideas in his mind. He may think that it is literally burning all evil forces, and that the so-called the denizens of the darkness populating his environs, they all will be reduced to nothing, just like burning a piece of paper. Now the practitioner here is making a serious mistake. Waving the lamp is not an external activity at all. It may have an external looking like activity, but the objective is to get internal purity. But after a little bit of this kind of a proper training, he realizes that he needs to remember the real meaning of waving the lamp in front of the Lord. As we often pray, Jyotira Jyoti Ujjvala Hridi Kandara Tumi Tomo Bhanjana Hoy. In Bengali language, Swami Vivekananda composed this prayer, keeping Sri Ramakrishna in his mind, but it's a universal prayer. Jyotira Jyoti Ujjvala Hridi Kandara Tumi Tomo Bhanjana Hoy. This is possibly the best interpretation for what it means to wave a lamp in front of the Lord. It's a symbolic of the supreme truth residing as light in the heart, that it dispels the darkness of ignorance. It's not the denizens of the darkness, the ghosts and specters, but it is our own ignorance which is to be removed. And this removal of ignorance happens by jnana. Jnana is compared to the light, and the light is symbolically represented by a lamp. But however, the superstitious man doesn't stop there. The unscrupulous imaginations that he entertains are further believed to be direct experience of truth. Now, this doesn't need any description. It often happens to quite a few of us. It is actually because of the weakness of the mind. And Sri Krishna in Gita, in the 4th chapter of the Gita, he captures such a degraded moment. He says, Sa kalena mahato yogo nashtaf parantapa. Mahata kalena yogaha nashtaha. In the passage of time, the decay settles in. Now, but how to weed out such a superstition? Now, how to re-establish the pristine glory of the religion? Sri Krishna himself recommends in the very same 4th chapter. He says, adhere to jnana yajna. There's a beautiful shloka, Shreyan dravya mayad yajnat jnana yajnaf parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane pari samapyate. The sacrifice consisting of the study and the contemplation of the scriptures. This is given the definition of as jnana yajna. That alone can put an end to all actions. Now, this has to be read in a proper sense. Sarvam akhilam karma. Sarvam karma means all actions. Akhilam karma here means actions in its entirety. Sarvam karma is various kinds of actions. And akhilam karma here, karma is actually cause-effect relationship. So akhilam karma is the entire causal chain of the karma is also referred to this. So sarvam karma, akhilam karma, all actions in its entirety are put to rest by this knowledge sacrifice. This is the prescription of Sri Krishna. Now, it is important to note at this juncture that the karma that Sri Krishna is referring to in this shloka, how to understand the meaning. It is that which is engaged by a superstitious man. It is not the karma arising out of jnana, it is the karma arising out of ignorance. At the behest of such a superstitious belief, the deluded man engages in various karma. Now, such a karma will not yield any lasting benefit, neither to himself nor to the society. So, when it is said that the jnana yajna puts rest to all karma, Sri Krishna here actually means that it puts to rest all kinds of superstitions that the man entertains. Swami Vivekananda's observation that the study of Upanishads kills the superstition, that is possibly the best commentary that this Gita verse can have. Hence, we begin to study the Upanishads. The 2nd chapter of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, namely the Madhu Kanda, is Agama Pradhanam, is considered as Agama Pradhanam. That is, the scriptural utterances are given authoritative value. The scriptural utterances in the second chapter, they gain authoritative value. That is what Agama Pradhanam means. And they are attributed, these utterances are attributed the status of direct evidence. Direct evidence means there are two kinds of evidences, direct and indirect. Indirect means inferring. Direct here means you have to take it as it is presented. So they are direct evidences. Pratyaksha Pramana also it is called as. In fact, citing these evidences from the scripture, further theories and philosophies are formed. The Agama Pramana, namely the scriptural evidence, are to be blindly accepted as they are stated. Now, I want to put this in double quotes, blindly accepted. So, what does it mean? What is this level of acceptance? The words in the Pramana, the case endings of each of the words in the Pramana, the sentence formation with these words and case endings in the Pramana, none of these can be altered. The entire body of the text has to be accepted as it is given. Now, some people mistakenly take this to be some kind of a dogmatic approach to the study of truth, investigation of truth. That a statement is given and we have to take it as it is. Now, going by readings of a book, for them, for these people of skeptical nature, for them, the readings of the book are nothing but dogmas. Okay, now let us investigate on what is the nature of this dogma. What is this thing called dogma? Let me refer to the Oxford Dictionary meaning. It says a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. That's what Oxford Dictionary says from Google. Thanks to Google. Now, firstly, a dogma comes down, according to this definition, a dogma comes down from an authority. Well, be it skeptics or be adherent, we have no problem with that. Because authority always has a value, always has its say. There is a political authority, there is a social authority, and there is a institutional authority. So authority is not an issue at all. That a dogma coming down from an authority is never an issue at all. But what is the second problem? Second problem is that it cannot be challenged. It is incontrovertibly true. That is the downside of something that is a dogma. Now, why is it that the ruling termed as dogma cannot be challenged? It is because at the root of such a ruling, which is termed as dogma, there is a set of beliefs that cannot be verified. And this verification can neither be entertained subjectively nor objectively. A statement, along with its interpretation, has to be accepted as it is. On the contrary, a little deviation will help us to understand this point. From any investigation undertaken in science, it is expected that the claims, the hypotheses and the propositions, all of them, they become eventually verifiable. Now, this particular idea, for now, let us accept it with a pinch of salt. There are many false theories coming. So that is the reason why I use this phrase. But eventually there needs to be verifiable. Unless it is verified, it is not accepted. That much is true, very much true with science. Therefore, for this very reason that even now it faces stiff challenges from all its proponents, from all its adherents, followers, and what to say, even easy chair enthusiasts. And there is a funny way of saying, they are called tea table analysts. All ideas come when we come sit together and then discuss over a cup of tea. Many real problems have been solved and many unwanted problems are discussed. So science is facing challenges even at their hands. Well, nevertheless, however, Agama Pramana recorded in the books are not a bunch of dogmas. They may be authoritative, but they are challenged. They accept challenges. Now we will try to understand this with an example. It's a very important thing to deliberate on. Why Agama Pramana it can be challenged, how it can be challenged. In this creation, it is widely accepted in all the theistic philosophies of the East that there are three governing and guiding principles in the creation. What are they? One is termed as Ishvara, second is Jagat, and third is Jiva. Ishvara is the inviolable supreme principle. Nothing can violate it. And the second one is the Jagat. The Jagat is the insentient principle. All the cosmic evolution, we can say. And what about the Jiva? The Jiva is the sentient life principle. Okay, there are these guiding principles are there in this creation. Everything can be resolved to one of these three. Now, there is this statement in Chandogya Upanishad, occurring in the 6th chapter, 2nd section and first mantra, very first mantra. Ekameva advitiyam. It occurs in the mantra in the following manner. Sadeva soumya idam agra asit. Ekameva advitiyam. Now the word by word meaning of these two words, Ekameva advitiyam, is Ekameva is one only and Advitiyam is not two. What is it? Sat. Sat eva saumya. So Sat. What is the Sat? Sat is the supreme truth. Now this entire sentence, I don't want to explain it. As a full statement, I don't want to explain it. Because the moment I set forth to explain it, I will then be ascribing to a particular philosophical thought. That becomes a problem. So let us see one after another how different philosophical thoughts addresses this one statement. The statement Ekameva Advitiyam Sat can never be contradicted. Why cannot it be contradicted? Because Vedas are saying this. Vedas are ultimate authority. The ultimate authority comes from the very body of the scriptural statement. And the body cannot be challenged. But what this statement means, that is heavily debated. For instance, Kevala Advaita philosophy. What do they do with this statement? It forwards the proposition that there were, in first place, never three fundamental principles to start with. They are just like a dream. Ishvara, Jagat and Jiva, these are all just but a dream. And all that was, and all that is, and all that will be is Sat alone. Sadeva. Ekameva. Advitiyam. So this whole creation is just but a dream. That is the Kevala Advaita philosophy. Now the Advaita philosophy will, on the other hand, say that the three fundamental principles, Jiva, Jagata, Ishvara, they are one only. So the Jiva, Jagata, Ishvara, the Triputi is taken into consideration but resolved into one. And they are never two. And what is it? It is Sat only. Jiva is Sat only, Jagat is Sat only, and Ishvara is Sat only. So they give the popular example of a wave and an ocean. There are several waves coming in the ocean. All of them are nothing but the water. It's never different from the ocean. So this is their approach of explaining Ekameva Advitiyam. Now Dvaita philosophy will state that it is accepted that Sat alone is true and it is one only, Ekameva. But the rest, what is called as the Dvaita, but the rest, though they exist, are but separate from the Sat principle and can never match with that Sat principle. They can never match with the sum principle, but nevertheless it exists. How? What is the near example that we can take? They say Jada and Chaitanya. In a Jada, there is no Jada and Chaitanya. Chaitanya is basically the conscious principle. Jada is the opposite of it. They can never be matched. So Jada remains as Jada and Chaitanya remains as Chaitanya. So among the Jiva, Jagata, Ishvara, the Sat alone is true. And the rest are not Sat. And they cannot be matched. These two ideas, they don't match with each other. This is the approach of the Dvaita, as far as this particular statement is concerned. Now, Visishta Dvaita will state that the supreme principle Sat is one only and is the receptacle or Adhara, or it's called Ayana, of the other two. Just as the body and its organs. The organs are residing in the body, Anga and Angi Bhava. So this is Vishishtadvaita approach to Ekameva Advitiyam. It's here Ekam is what? Supreme principle Sat. It is Ekameva. Advitiyam. Then what are the rest? The rest are all inhering in the one. Now the Achintya Bheda, there is another beautiful philosophy that will state that the supreme principle again is one only, and the rest, what we see as rest, are the power of the supreme principle manifested, constituting this Jagat and Jiva. And the Jagat and Jiva becomes an empirical reality, not the supreme reality. Sat alone is the supreme reality and Jiva Jagat is an empirical reality. And at the same time, this Jiva and Jagat is identical with the supreme principle. This is their position. And they give the instance of fire and its burning power. So can we separate these two? Yeah, fire and its burning power are different as far as noun and verb is concerned. So likewise, the inseparability comes between the Jiva Jagata and the Ishvara part. Now, are all of them presenting the same views? We saw 4 different views. Are all of them same? Are all of them different? Now, obviously they are all different. The approach is different, leading to the experience of the Sat principle. But the approach is different. Now, such an evolution of thought was possible with the same very body of the text which is accepted by everyone. So as a body of text, all this philosophy accepted, but as an interpretation, they all differ. As long as the interpretation can be kept consistent, it serves the purpose of being a philosophy, a useful, realizable philosophy. And incidentally, is it such a debatable reasoning, a creation of the human mind? Not at all. Yajnavalkya, in the 2nd chapter itself, he reminds Maitreyi that the best way to know the self is through the process of Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. Here, we saw in the last lecture a very detailed explanation of this Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana process. We observed that Manana, which is a contemplation, is assisted by reasoning. So all the different kinds of reasoning that we give, consistent reasoning will give, they all gets into this procedural step called contemplation. So far, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has proposed the concept of unity in the 1st and the 2nd chapter through various statements, such as, the reason why I am referring to these statements is because they all are given to interpretations. We are currently looking at a specific perspective from the Advaita standpoint, but there are various other perspectives. So these statements is only meant to trigger our mind, to create our own perspective and our own experience of the reality, leading to the experience of the reality, rather. So some such statements are as follows: Atmaivedam, Atmaivedam agra asit, Brahmaivedam agra asit. And then The very same mantra says, Aham Brahmasmi. And then another mantra says, Yatornanabis tantuna vyucharet. Satyasya satyam. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Sarvam atmaiva bhut. Kenakam pashyet, kenakam jigret ityadi. Purushaha yoyam atma amritam brahmedam sarvam. Then ayam atma sarvesham bhutanam adhipati. So these are the profound statements we found in the first and second chapter. And the last two mantras of the fifth section of the second chapter, it summarizes the scriptural position of the Brahman. We will see this in today's class. Idam vai tanmadu dadyanghatarvanosh vibhyamuvacha. Dadyach Atharvana. He is a Atharva Vedi expert. Who is the Dadyach Rishi? He is versed in Atharva Veda. He taught the Ashwin twins. These are the twins who are called the doctors, the divine doctors. They have the full knowledge of, according to our mythology, they seems to be having all the knowledge of the herbs, and they can cure any kind of illness. So the Ashwin twins we call. So the Dadyach taught Ashwins. Tadeta drichigi pashyan avochat. Perceiving the truth, the Rishi said. Rishi was not remembering what he studied. He was not contemplating on some idea the previous day or the month and then communicating that idea to Ashwin. But he says, Pashyan avochat. All the communications which the Rishis did that are embodying the text of the Vedas, they are all darshanas. That idea is being reflected in this mantra. Pashyan avochat. The Rishi perceives and then instructed the Ashwins. What was the instruction? Puraschakre dvipadaha, puraschakre chatushpadaha. He, the self, made the bodies with 2 feet and the bodies with 4 feet. It's about the creation. And purasa pakshi bhutva puraf purusha avishat iti. Saha puraha pakshi bhutva. Again, the supreme being, puraha means the first, at the very instant of the creation. He entered the bodies of all the created beings. He entered into their bodies just like a bird entering into a cave or kind of something like that. So this entering refers to Atma's presence as a subtle body in our human constitution. That is being referred to as the word Pakshi Bhutva. Here Pakshi means to be understood as subtle bodies. So as a subtle body, he entered into the physical body. This also indicates that the immanence, the inhering principle of the eternal soul in every body, this seems to be a very favorite idea of the Upanishads. Occasion permitting, it brings this idea. And the next mantra describes the etymology of the term Purusha, the man. The next trick says, Sava ayam Purushaha sarvasu pursu purishayaha. He, the self, on account of his dwelling in all the bodies, for the fact that he has entered into all the bodies, as a subtle body, as the bird, as referred into the previous verse, by that fact, the individual comes to be called as a Purusha. Purusha, the man. Why do we call the man? Because Pursu is the body. Purishayaha, he has gone and filled it up. As he fills the body, the individual comes to be called as Purusha. This is the etymology of the term Purusha. The next mantra says, there is nothing that is not covered by him. Na anena kinchanana vritam. Kinchana na avritam. Kinchanana vritam. There is nothing that is not covered by him. Within the body, he has permeated through every cell, every atom. There is not a single place which he has not occupied. He, the Atman. Na anena kinchana samvritam. There is nothing that is not pervaded by him. This is the 19th mantra, 18th mantra. And the 19th mantra continues in the same similar strain. Rupam rupam pratirupo bhabuva. He, the Supreme Self, he transformed himself in accordance with each form. In the bird, he appears as a bird. In the frog, he is a frog. In the lion, he is a lion. In the human, he is a human. So in every form he has entered, he has transformed himself into that form. And this is a very beautiful idea, which Upanishads, even other Upanishads actually reflect the same idea. For instance, we can see in Kathopanishad, Agnir yathaiko, Vayur yathaiko, Bhuvanam pravishtaha, Rupam rupam prati rupo bhabuva. Ekaha tatha sarva bhutantaratma, Rupam rupam prati rupo bahischa. This is Kathopanishad saying. So the meaning of this mantra is as fire or air. Though they are one, having entered into the world, they take separate forms in respect of every form. Every form is formed after these forms, after this fire and water, air. So does the internal Atman of all the living things assume a form for every form and is outside all forms. Kincha nainena kinchanana samvritam. There is nothing outside it, it says. That means what? Every form is permeated. And here, with respect to the form, the Atman is different from it. The form is not Atman, but the Atman permeates the form. This is a paradoxical position which Upanishad creates in front of us. The one fire, it burns all the combustible materials. And it burns them differently, but they are just one. And the air also, they become manifold as it enters the body. And each of these air gets a name. It's called Pratta. The Upanishad calls them as a Pratta Vayu. So likewise, the Atman also appears in different bodies, and yet it is not defined by these bodies. Bodies do not comprehensively define the Atman, even though the Atman is filling those bodies. There's always this duality approach. From the perspective of Atman, there is always unity. From the perspective of the body, the Atman is considered to be separate. So in the 11th chapter of the Gita, with regards to this verse, Rupam Rupam Pratirupo Bhabuva, I remember in the 11th chapter of Gita, where Arjuna queries Krishna in the following way. It's a very beautiful query. And in reply, we get a fantastic answer from Krishna also. Drashtumichhami te rupam aishwaram purushottama. Hey Purushottama, I wish to see your glorious form. And in reply, Sri Krishna gives Arjuna the Vishwarupa Darshana. How? The Upanishadic idea is that the Atman has entered into every form as a subtle body. And it fills the form to the brim, to the full exterior, not leaving even a single cell, a total permeation. So, that idea is symbolized in Sri Krishna's Vishwarupa Darshana. It gives a detailed picture of the various forms, both divine form and as well as earthly form, all are comprehensively abiding in him the Krishna, the body of Krishna. Which in other words mean that the same self is assuming the various forms. That is the essence. Sri Krishna says, Ihaikastam, in reply to Arjuna's query, Ihaikastam Jagat Kritsnam Pashyadya Sacharacharam Mamadehe Gudakesha Yat Cha Anyat Drashtumichyasi. See the language Bhagavan Krishna uses here. Jagat Kritsnam Sacharacharam, the entire universe consisting of both sentient and insentient beings. Mamadehe, in my body, Yat Cha Anyat, this and what more? Drashtumichyasi, whatever you want to see, it can be seen in this body of mine. Sacharacharam, the insentient and the sentient principle. Now, in addition to this Jagat, Bhagavan also shows Arjuna certain divine things, such as the verses recollect Divya Malyam Baradaram, Divya Gandhanu Lepanam, Sarvascharya Idam Devam, Sarvato Vishwato Mukam, Divi Surya Sakhasrasya Bhaved Yugabaduttita, etc. etc. So, he shows several such divine forms also. Now, why? Well, that is not available for the human naked eye. That's why he says, Divyam Dadami Te Chakshuhu, I give you some divine eyes so that you can see both the earthly things as well as the divine things. Now, why is it that God has to show him some divine things? We can hypothesize here a theory that if Sri Krishna had shown only what is called as Charachara Jagat available to the human eyes, naked eyes, then Arjuna might have limited the manifestation of Sri Krishna to only those things that are found in the earth. Importantly, note in the reply, Arjuna asked Aishwaram Rupam, and the Supreme Godhead, he points to the Charachara Jagat. So, from this we get a very important message that this world that houses all kinds of contrasting differences and contradictions is also the Lord's Aishwarya, is also divine. So, Sri Krishna makes it pertinent to bring this message clear, that this Jagat is also a divine manifestation. It should not be seen as a mere jada. Again, in Kathopanishad, the verse continues to say that Eko Vashi Sarva Bhutantaratma Ekam Rupam Bahudha Karoti. Its meaning is the sole controller, the internal Atman of all the living beings, who makes his own form diverse. His own form of the self has been made diverse. Ekam Rupam Bahudha Karoti. Rupam Rupam Pratirupam Babhuva. Now, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad continues. So after stating this, Tadasya Rupam Prati Chakshanaya. Why is it that the Lord permeated through all the bodies? What was the necessity for the permeation of the self into the bodies? I mean, this is kind of a back calculation. Nevertheless, it's worthy of investigation. It's because that the self may be therefore known only for the sake of knowing the self, that the self took various forms. The various manifestations are only meant for knowing that the self alone has become all these. The supreme reality is permeating through every little experiences and every little thing that we get to experience. Now, man gets attracted to one form or the other because it is Aishwaram Rupam. Man's mind is extremely powerful. It cannot be contained by a mere wishful thinking. It is very, very powerful. That is the reason for his eternally being not satisfied with the materials of the earth, because his mind is too great to be contained by so-called the worldly things. So he always aspire for more and more and more. That's good. That is because of this Jagat is also Lord's Aishwarya. It is also a part of his divinity. And therefore, there is a continuous charm this spells, it casts on our mind. So man gets attracted to one form or the other. Even if he be reticent nature, he at least will get attracted to himself. Now, if we investigate that the very form, the very form of attraction, the very genesis of that attraction, how is the attraction sustained? And how is the attraction dissolved? It begins with the object, it continues with the object, and it ends with the object. The object itself meets with the dissolution in the mind of the person who is experiencing the object. And all of them are contained to the self. At the dissolution of this idea, the mind merges with the self. Now, the purpose of this manifestation, therefore, an object comes in the big. Earlier, the object was not there. The object comes in the Anadi. The Sri Krishna says that earlier it was not there. Only in the middle it is present, and later also it vanishes. What is it? All the created objects. It's only to show the impermanence of these objects. Nevertheless, the purpose of coming in the middle, manifestation in the middle, so to say, is only to know the origin, namely the self. That's what the mantra says. Tadasya rupam pratichakshanaya. Only for the experience of the self, these objects have come into existence. Now, we go to sleep, but when I wake up in the morning after the sleep, I only see the same things that were laid down around me before going to the sleep. The things that I have looked upon as merely things, these things were not looked upon as Atman. I see the same people and I identify them as, with the earlier perception, as being dull or mediocre or intelligent or a short, medium, tall, whatever. But not as a personification of Atman. Why is it so? The Atman is pervaded everywhere, but nevertheless I am not able to see the Atman. Day after day after day, our search only goes in vain, apparently. The search with the outside goes in vain. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad continues to say, Indro maya puru rupa iyate. Tadasya rupam pratichakshanaya Indro maya puru rupa iyate. The word Indra in this case is not to be understood as god of devas, such as Agni or Vayu. But Indra here refers to the Supreme Lord, the Self. Now, the meaning of this mantra is the Self, on account of Maya, is perceived as manifold. Now, this particular idea is given from the point of view of a Baddha Jiva, not from the point of view of a Mukta Jiva. From the person who is already in bondage, for him, as an explanation of this Dvaita Jagat, of experiencing this duality, as an explanation it is given that there is this Maya, the power of the self which is working. And due to that Maya, we see something manifold. But if we take this statement and the earlier statement, namely, Pratirupam Rupam Pratirupam Babhuva, there is a contradiction. First mantra says the self took all the form. And the second, Indro Maya Pari Puru Rupa Iyate, there we say that on account of Maya, the manifold is perceived. Now, which one is true here? Is it that the Maya, is it because of the Maya it became manifold, we are seeing? Or the self indeed it took the various forms? The explanation is here now. The self took various forms so that the self can be known. Tadasya rupam pratichakshanaya. Now, but due to the Maya, the superimposed ignorance, the very purpose for which this manifestation has happened, that purpose is now not solved because of this Maya. Because to our senses, only the Dvaita Jagat is available for cognition. And the self has remained hidden. And because of the self being hidden, as long as the self is hidden, we say that the Maya is functioning, that the ignorance is superimposed on the reality. And therefore the self is unknown without hint. And Kathopanishad says, who can actually behold the self? It says, Tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiraha tesham sukham shashvatam na itaresham. The dhiraha, Kathopanishad refers to dhira in quite a few places. Kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmana maikshat. So like that, dhira is a very favorite word in Kathopanishad. He says, this intelligent, courageous, intelligent man, he alone realizes him. Atmastam ye anupashyanti. One who sees us, the self seated in his own he alone realizes, and as a result, Shashvatam Shukam Prapnoti. He gets the eternal bliss. Na itaresham, not the other. Then Brihadaranyaka continues, Yukta Hyasya Harayaha Shatadasha. Regarding this Atman going and filling up the bodies, it continues to say that to this self are yoked, yuktaha, yukta means yoking, are yoked Harayaha Dasha. Harayaha. Hari actually here means the organs, that which attracts, that which pulls. So Hari is organs. So Harayaha in plural. Dasha Harayaha. The 10 organs are yoked to the self. And after saying 10, the Upanishad revises itself. No, it cannot be 10. Hundreds of them. Shatha. In fact, the reference to why Upanishad refers to 10 here, and then converts it to 100. Not only that, it converts it to Bahuni Anantanicha in the next mantra. That the 10 is coming because of the traditional notion of the 5 karmendriyas and 5 jnanendriyas. The 5 jnanendriyas are corresponding to the 5 sense objects, pertaining to the sight, sound, smell, touch, and the taste. But are there only these many kinds of sense organs and sense objects? Upanishad says no. Popularly 10, but there are hundreds of them. And the next mantra says Bahunicha Anantanicha, even more, and for instance, infinite. This is a very beautiful idea from Upanishad. There are infinite organs and infinite senses. How to understand this idea? Infinite here in the sense that there are many which we have not accounted. 10 are just for instance. In fact, I remember when I was going through Google on this particular topic, I hit upon a nice article. It's a very backdated article, March 15th, 1964. I will paste this link of the article in the comment section. You can, in the info section, you all can read at your leisure. 1964, the New York Times, they published an article that stated, we have more than 5 senses. That's the article. Most people take the faculties of sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing for granted, but not the scientist. This is how the article begins. Too long for a title, but it's quite an old article. And they are not to be taken too seriously, as because it makes some observation on scientific basis. And science revises its opinion after a generation gap, at least. And in this article, you will also find the author has wrongly attributed Aristotle to be the first to note the big 5 among the senses. He writes the big 5 among the senses, namely the touch, hearing, sight, smell, and taste. The author of this article must not have read the Upanishads. It's a truth which is known to the East since time immemorial. However, banking on the then scientific observations, discoveries, the writer observes that besides the 5 senses, there are many fringe abilities untapped and not brought to the fore, not put to the use by a healthy man. They are all hidden as latent tendencies. But no sooner the regular senses that he is using, they get affected, than he trains those fringe and hidden abilities to come to the fore. For instance, the author writes, there is an ability to relate odor, smell, and the sound material to that of its form, and the ability to relate touch to sound, and so on. So this whole gamut of study now falls under presently the brain neuroscience. They are doing it. This idea becomes even more clear, which the author wishes to say. It becomes even more clear if we give up the human constitution and then study the lesser beings. Say, for instance, the migrating birds. How is it that they are able to find their incubatory homes? These migratory birds, thousands of miles away from their natural habitats. They are able to find their homes. Repeatedly, year after year, when the season comes, they migrate. The scientists have brought forth three kinds of theories. Why this deviation I am talking about? Because Upanishad says, Harayaha, the senses, Bahuni cha Anantani cha. For that reason, I'm brooding over this kind of a deviation, an infotainment deviation. So the scientists have brought forth three kinds of theories for explaining the migratory behavior of the birds. One is called the magnetite theory. This theory says that there are cells that have iron in them, and then the birds are able to sense the Earth's magnetic field because of the iron content in the cell. That's one theory. Another theory says that the ears of the birds, they are the direction finders. Because it generates some small electrical voltage, it seems. But that generation of the electric field also is attributed to the Earth's magnetic field. And then there's a third theory that says the bird's eyes have a certain kind of a protein. They call this protein as a cryptochrome, some name. And this produces what is called as some radical pairs. Again, this production is because of the Earth's magnetic field. So as of now, it is not certain which theory is sound, but one essential common factor to all this theory is that the scientists hypothesize that the birds are using the Earth's magnetic field for finding direction. They are all going in this particular viewpoint to demystify the migratory behavior of the birds. Now, I cannot say whether for certain whether all these ideas put forth by science, whether they are intuited in the Upanishads. I don't claim that way. When it declares Harayaha, Shataha, Dasha, Bahuni cha, Anantani cha, that the organs are in tens, hundreds, nay, unlimited. But essentially, what the Upanishads have done is, it has done a fantastic out-of-box thinking and have laid before us the idea that the Atman is too versatile to be estimated by the human mind. And that the infinite are the capabilities. Infinite here, it simply means that how much ever you find, there will be something more to find. In that sense, unaccountable, and are all in potent form in the living beings. And they can be manifested through the organs. So much so, the organs themselves are identified with the Atman. Says the next mantra. Ayam vai harayaha. He, the self, is the organs. Ayam vai dasha cha sahasrani, and so on. Harayaha. We have seen this particular idea. Now, ayam vai harayaha, this is an important point, that this is the message we get, that the organs themselves, the organs are getting the power from the Atman. So, by its mere proximity and pervasivity of the Atman, the organs get the identity with Atman. However, there is a point of caution here. These lakshanas of the Atman that are inferred, they are all from the standpoint of Vyavahara. It's called as Tadastha Lakshanas or Vyavahara Lakshanas. But what is the Swarupa Lakshana? The Swarupa Lakshana of the Atman is enumerated in the next mantra. It says, Tadetad Brahma Apurvam Anaparam Anantaram Abhahyam. Apurvam Anaparam Anantaram Abhahyam. These four qualities are postulated with regards to the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman. The Brahman is without prior, without posterior, without interior, and without exterior. Now, if you go back to Sri Krishna's description of the Vishwarupa Darshana, the gigantic form in which every other form resides. That is to bring out this idea that there is nothing outside the purview of this divine self, the Brahman, and that everything is contained in the self. And in a dualistic sense also, the Gita recalls that the Bhagavan who manifests the self in its pristine purity, he is the Gati, the goal, he is the Bharta, the sustainer, he is the Prabhu, the Lord, and he is the Nivasa, the receptacle, and he is Sharanam, the ultimate refuge, and he is Suhrit, the best friend. Ayam Atma Brahma, this self is the Brahma, Sarvanubhuhu, the perceiver of everything. Iti Anushasanam. This is the teaching. So this is the teaching which Dadyach Rishi gave to the Ashwin twins, that summarized in the 18th and the 19th mantra of the 5th section in the 2nd chapter. Or maybe it's 15th and 16th mantra. I don't recollect now. So this concludes the 2nd chapter. As we know, the next Brahmana, the 6th Brahmana of the 2nd chapter, pays tribute to the lineage of rishis who have realized this Pashyan Navochat kind of experience, that all these revelations, all these utterances are conforming with the revelations. And who are all those people who have communicated this knowledge through a series of guru-disciple relationship? They were all mentioned in the 6th Brahmana. We have seen in the last meeting, in the last lecture. So in the next lecture, we will begin with the 3rd chapter of this Upanishad. Let's conclude with the prayer to Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. Shakti samudra samutatarangam dashita prema vijrumbitarangam. Shakti samudra samutatarangam darshita prema vijrumbitarangam. Samshaya rakshasa nasha mahastram yami gurum sharanam bhava vaidyam. Samshaya rakshasa nasha mahastram yami gurum sharanam bhava vaidyam. Naradeva Jaya Jaya Naradeva